Most of the Indians who were in this area use this more as a highway to move up and down and back and forth across it rather than establishing in it much in the way of permanent residence. There is evidence of a few semi-permanent villages in the valley, usually up on the bluffs, but those were probably also just maybe used 6 months out of the year at the most. So the Indians really were pretty nomadic in this part of Nebraska, and as a result of that, there isn't a whole lot of evidence of them, although you can find arrowheads and things of that sort. White people started coming down in here, probably in the early 1800s, mid-1800s. The first white people in here were, like most other places, trapping and hunting. I suppose the valley had its share of horse thieves that used it for hideout, but that would be later in the 1800s. The first permanent settlers were some ranchers, although really ranching was more in the sandhills than down here in the valley itself. By the mid or late 1800s, people had begun to settle in here and make a stab at farming. And from the 1880s perhaps, or 1870s, in that range, up until the Depression years of the 30s, the valley was pretty heavily populated. Small family farms were pretty typical in the valley, but the Depression wiped out a bunch of those. There was a slight resurgence of that during World War II and into the 50s, but at that time it was less the farming than perhaps cattle ranching on small scale. But then a lot of those people in the last 20 years have moved on also, and so it's relatively sparsely populated today.
Modern explorers go with the flow of the Niobrara at 4 to 7 miles an hour. Lou Christensen is one of 8 outfitters in the Valentine area that offer canoes and services to the modern explorers.
It's a fairly shallow river, which makes it a real nice river for people to canoe. Runs about, this right in here, we're about 6 to 8 inches deep. It will average about 18 inches deep. We have a lot of people who've never canoed in their whole lives come up here. First time they get in the canoe, that's the first time they've been in one. So it's an excellent river for novice. The heaviest use of the river is June and July, and August is usually pretty heavy, but less so. We're going through the first of the chutes on the river. We call them chutes. There's a very shallow rock bar up here, and the river has cut a narrow cut through that bar, which is deep. And of course the water rolls off of the shallow bar into the deep part and sets up a few waves, which is what we're hitting right here. Nothing very tough, just kind of fun. That's usually the first test for a novice canoer. The normal costs are going to be to rent a canoe, and you're going to have some kind of transportation. Either you're going to park your car at the top and canoe down and somebody brings you back, or you're going to have to park at the bottom and have somebody take you to the top and put you in. Basically, one canoe for one day with the minimum transportation will run in the neighborhood of $25.
15,000 to 20,000 canoeists a year from 7 states make the trip to Valentine, spending about $165 a day, a nice boost to Valentine's Main Street. The director of the town's Economic Development Committee, William Quigley, says the canoeists are important.
Our community is primarily a ranching community. We have Valentine is an excellent trade center, and it serves approximately a 100-mile radius. And so anytime we can get any kind of industry, like the tourism industry, bringing in $2 to $3 million more, it is quite a notable impact on our community.
This river is entirely spring-fed. It does not originate in the mountains, and it has no snow melt over the summer to make it go. It's all entirely spring-fed. Most of it fed out of the sandhills of Nebraska, under which lies the Ogallala Aquifer, which is one of the largest underground.
The canoe run starts for most canoeists in the Fort Niobrara Wildlife Refuge. In most places, the tree-lined river looks much like it did years ago. Even with 20,000 canoeists a year, most of them visiting during June and July, Christensen says there aren't any canoe jams.
On our busiest Saturdays up here, we may run 500 canoes, and there may be a few more. And that's a lot of canoes, and most of them will put in between 9 and 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. So you probably will canoe Saturday with canoes around you in sight all the time. You're not shore-to-shore canoes, and you're not bumper-to-bumper. 500 canoes stretched out over this stretch of river is not crowded. During the week is usually the best, yes, because there will be some canoes on almost every day of the week, but the odds of you actually seeing them are pretty slim. There's a myriad of wild flowers, both in the valley and then up in the sandhills. That's one thing that surprised me when we moved up here, was the number of flowers that bloomed all summer long. There's always flowers. One of the things that a lot of people up here have fun doing is watching birds as they go down the river. We get some people up here really pretty excited.
Bird is the big one up there.
I was looking at that. I can't tell whether it's a turkey vulture. I think that's what it is. Get a little closer, we might be able to see it. There are a lot of turkey vultures up here. We have eagles up here too, although that didn't look like one. Other birds of prey. We have the red-tailed hawk, of course, and a rough-legged hawk. And then we have some of the smaller ones too, which are a little less commonly known by the general public. And then small songbirds by the hundreds.
A must-stop for canoeists is Smith Falls, the highest falls in Nebraska. Smith's isn't the only waterfall. It seems you pass one every 10 yards.
Most people who are new canoers will canoe a stretch of the river that is pretty easy to handle. And after they have canoed the upper stretch here for 2 or 3 hours, they've got a pretty good handle on what makes a canoe go. And generally are ready for any of the lower stretches that might be a little bit trickier. We're starting through a series of these rock shelves with a cut down the center of them, or down through them, and the cut is where the whitewater is. It rolls off the shelf into the cut and sets up these waves, which is the Niobrara whitewater. The whitewater we have on this river, most of it is because there's a hard pan bottom close to the surface of the water, and the water over the years has cut a channel through that hard pan, and then the water comes off of the shelf into the deeper cut and sets up some standing waves, some rough water, and that for the most part is what whitewater is on the Niobrara. It's kind of bouncy, kind of fun, not real dangerous. What we're coming up on now is called the chute, and it's another one of those rock shelves. Off to the right or the left side of the canoe you can see the ripply water, which indicates that it's real shallow right in there. We're going down the cut, which starts right about in here where we're at and culminates in the whitewater that you see downstream. Those are actually below the rock shelf, and they're more like standing waves that have been created by the water coming into the chute and then shooting out at the bottom, and so we get a nice stand of waves in here.
Each nook and cranny of the Niobrara has a name, like Smith Falls or Fritz's Island.
We're coming up on Fritz's Island here. It's called Fritz's Island because there's an old man that lives near it, Fritz Brandenburg, who's 96 years old. If you have concerns about taking the whitewater, you can take the left channel, which makes an easy trip down and around. I see another blue heron. But we're going right through the heavy stuff today. Now we will head down here just to the right of center, and you'll begin to see some whitewater bouncing down there at the bottom, and we will try to aim right for that. Here we go. Island and the rapids there.
One part of the Niobrara River we didn't take our camera gear through is this. It's called Curie's Rapids. It's really a water roller coaster, and as you can see, I didn't come out of it unsoaked. Then there are the places you can't get a canoe through. You have to portage on land, unless you have an inner tube. The tubing, chutes, and the placid parts of the Niobrara that make it one of the best in the country can be started or stopped anytime and traveled in a few hours, one day, or several days. On the Niobrara River, I'm Dave Mossner reporting 430.